So we're looking at these low-lying lands, basically in central Scotland, and how these lands were at one time not just below sea level. According to people like Combs Beaumont and many others, these lands were actually canals and waterways, and much of what we understand today is Glasgow, Stirling, Kirkintilloch, Sais and Cumbernauld and all these sort of areas. These were all vast canal systems and ports, basically. So I'm reading from Combs Beaumont's book, the one that's The Great Deception, Syria, Britain and the Roman Conspiracy, and it's a 2015 edit, published by kind permission of the estate of William Combs Beaumont, 215, all rights reserved. So and I'm reading from page I'm not going to be reading from page 285, but from 285, which is Appendix C, Athens and Dumbarton, I'm going to be reading, let me see, from page let's go to 288. Yeah, we'll go to, I'll start in 288. It's worth getting the book if anybody hasn't got the book. I know it's quite difficult to get hold of, but it's worth getting the book. It is available online, and I'll put it on my Facebook page as a PDF download at some point today. So we're reading from page 288, and it's the Appendix C, Athens and Dumbarton, from the book Combs Beaumont, The Great Deception, Syria, Britain and the Roman Conspiracy. And basically in this book he's making the claim that, not specifically in this book, but he makes a claim that a meteor destroyed most of what we understand as the British Isles, and that they were isles, and it wasn't one nation as we understand now as the United Kingdom. There was much more water, and yeah, what I'm trying to show is that the people who rule us, who shouldn't be ruling us, have drained much of the water away and rewrote our history and replaced our history with Scottish history nonsense, primarily. Exported the true history of our lands, which these lands here are the holy lands, the sacred lands, and these waterways which I'm away to show, which is right here on this map in front of me, are the seas of the entrance to the Sea of Galilee, and Nazareth. So I'll be reading from page 288 of his book, and it's Appendix C. Richard of Chichester states that Attocotti or Ethocotti, where the Ethocotti people were in Dumbartonshire, next to the Damnee in Stirling. These are the tribes. And Irvine says that Arcuth, also named Theodosia, the father of the later emperor of the same name, who forced pagans to adopt to Christianity. In 366, he was sent to Britain by the Beletians because certain tribes, the Picts, the Scots and the Attocotti, were up in arms against the Romans. They were said to have pillaged Augusta, which was Edinburgh at the time, and to have carried off many slaves. Theodosius, after subduing the Attocotti, made Dumbarton the capital of the Roman province, named Valentia, after the Valentian, the former Strathclyde. This apparently endured until the year 869, when, according to the Annals of Ulster, in that year the city Alcud, also famous of old, which is situated at the west extremity of that famous wall, was destroyed by Daco. Now obviously, this is me saying here that that famous wall must be the Antonine Wall. Dumbarton thus emerges with the reputation as most famous of old, but without giving any clue other than that in 367 it was regarded as the centre of activity in the serious challenge to Roman predominance. Yet the fact cannot be overlooked that the city, with its outstanding rock, possesses the characteristics of a place known as Athens. Moreover, that the people were called Attocotti, a name closely related to the Greek Attica, of which Athens was the heart and soul, so to compel close consideration. In addition, and most especially, Dumbarton stands exactly where Athens stood at the time of its capture by Xerxes. Now, I've done a video on Sais and the Battle of Glencoe and the the Spartans, and I took it from this book here. So it mentions here Sais. So as described elsewhere in this present work, it fits in moreover with the descriptions of different parts of Hellas outlined in my previous works on the subject, as a glance at maps in the present volume will indicate clearly. We have, I suggest, another most interesting clue to the position of the original Athens. The city, as we are aware, was very maritime and possessed three ports: Piraeus, Munychia, adjoining the former, and the long-distance port of Palerium, all connected with the city by long walls. The city itself was walled over a mile around. There were double walls to the Piraeus and the Munychia, the distance of 40 stadia, or a little under 5 miles beyond the city wall. Falarium, or Falarum, with a single wall, lay at a far greater distance, with its harbour in what was called the Gulf of Phalerum. According to Smith's Classical Dictionary, the extension beyond the city walls amounted to 174.5 stadia, or a little under 22 miles, from Piraeus, or 26 miles, to the citadel, which is a very curious fact of itself, for why, with two harbours at its door, so to speak, did Athens require so much of a distant harbour port such as Palerium, and one so important to her maritime interests? The present Athens entirely fails geographically to explain the problem, for its supposed Piraeus and the Munychia are placed at about 3.5 miles from the city, and Falerium actually nearer, about 2 miles, and in any case possessing no archaeological evidence to support such claims. Can the puzzle be explained? Can we realize why Athens required a port so far distant from the city, and for which long protective walls were necessary? Such cannot, of course, apply in any way to the topography of the existing Athens. After the route of the Persian ships of Salamis, Herodotus tells us that those which escaped the Athenian pursuit fled to Falerium, and there sheltered themselves under the protection of the land army, adding, these all assembled at the port of Falerium, thus obtaining safety from their pursuers. It is obvious that this port could not have been situated in the same open sea where Salamis stood, for otherwise the enemy's ships would have been completely at the mercy of the victorious Athenians and their allies. Note also that they sheltered themselves under the protection of the land army, this inference being that the Persian soldiery, then masters of Athens, could protect them. There is only one possible explanation of the given facts, namely that they had sought protection in a river or a canal which led to Falerium, a port which faced the eastern sea or Hellespont. Let us consider the situation of Dumbarton in this matter. The annals of Ulster, as was noted, say that the famous Alcud was situated at the extremity of that famous wall, associating it with the so-called Roman wall. Gildas, who was born at Alcud, says that the wall extended from sea to sea across the island, and that it stretches westward to the city of Alcud. The Venerable Bede says that the wall began in the east from Abaddon to Fenfahel, as the Picts named it, Falkirk, and it stretched towards the west to terminate close by the city of Alcud. These two reputable historians of their period both associate the Roman wall, the Antonine wall, especially with Dumbarton, and the question arises if some wall did not exist long before Roman times. There are indications that a turf wall existed from Old Kirkpatrick, some 4.5 miles east of Dumbarton, and it led to Falkirk, with various traces of a canal, or, as usually described, a ditch of a much earlier period. It is an interesting problem. Lolladus Arbicus erected fortresses and a stone wall in 138, and later Severus built a wall round about 208 to 210 after crossing a vast ditch into Scotland in 2008. 208. There are 22 to 23 place names of forts across the isthmus over a distance of some 36 miles from the Clyde end, Bowling, 3¼ miles east of Dumbarton, to the mouth of the Forth at Bowness at Abercorn. The sites of importance in our quest are Old Kilpatrick, Kirkintilloch, Castle Carey and Falkirk. Of these, Old Kilpatrick lies about 4½ miles east of Dumbarton. Kirkintilloch is 11½ Castle Carey 16½, Croy is 20½, and Falkirk is 26½ based on the Ordnance Survey, all associated with that same wall and the former waterway. The suggestion to be made is that Falkirk was the original Phalerum, Athens' long-distance port. So I'll stop that here and go back again. So I'll read that again just in case we missed it. So what he's saying here in the book here is that this waterway that existed linking east to west, linking what we would understand as the Irish Sea today and what we would understand as the North Sea today, coming through the Firth of Forth, this was a gigantic waterway, a sea. And not just that, it had it had a canal system, obviously with locks, to allow the water flow to come in and out. So this is very interesting, and he actually gives the full description here, and we can see here on the map that, you know, it's more than possible, because the land level is 2 meters below, 9 meters above sea level in most cases here. With this map you can see clearly that it's, you know, it's a it's a waterway, and the potential for it being a waterway again is vast. I've been saying to people for a long time that the British Isles are isles and always have been isles, but they've drained the water, and people talk about mud floods and so on, and well, the houses were built, the buildings were actually built in the water, because they were harnessing, after the flood, they were harnessing energy, and before the flood. But at some point, the ones who should not be, the elite, the ones who took over the royal houses, the Hanoverian bloods, decided to bury this history and drain the water. And in draining the water, what they've done is taken away our power. So this is Combs Beaumont's book, and I'll just zoom in here while we're talking about it. To the places is interesting. He says a historian Servius built a wall, Lolus or Bucus erected fortresses, a stone wall in the year 138, and later Servius built a wall around about the year 208 to 210 after crossing a vast ditch. So there was some sort of vast ditch here in this part of Scotland. There are 22 place names and ports across the isthmus, across the distance of some 36 miles from the Clyde end, Bowling. So if we ready, let's look at Bowling. It's up here. So this is Dumbarton, and we're looking for the little place Bowling, which is only a few miles apart. Old Kilpatrick and Bowling. Here we go. Is it here? Somewhere here. But yeah, you can clearly see here that's a waterway. And it was a waterway. Yeah, Bowling, Faithley, all below water level, all below sea level, sorry. Yeah, up through Sais. It says here there are 22 across the isthmus over a distance of 36 miles from the Clyde end, Bowling 3½ miles east of Dumbarton, to the mouth of the Forth, Bowness, Abercorn. So if I jump over to the page 292 of this book, Combs Beaumont, The Great Deception, in the appendix C, when it's talking about Dumbarton, sorry about that, the noise, I'll read this little part here on page 291 and 292, and it says, Ramsay placed, some historian, placed the western extremity of the wall to the point where the Kilpatrick hills descend abruptly to what was then the seashore, and so saved any further need of any fortifications. Investigations at Old Kilpatrick have revealed the former existence of an extensive quay and docks marked the entrance to the Clyde. So the entrance to Clyde wasn't where it is today, but actually there at Dumbarton, just at Old Kilpatrick. The fosse originally began there, and along the line of the wall are many signs of the former waterway. Jesse Mothersole, whose archaeological work in connection with the Roman wall is based on the investigations of General Roy, given the following information of a vallum and a canal starting from Dumbarton, making its way through 1 Old Kilpatrick, a distance from Dumbarton 4.5 miles, evidence of the former large quays docks. So there's evidence of a former large quay and docks, and it was at the port of Dumbarton. So let's go back down again. We're back at Dumbarton, and we can see quite clearly here. Here we get in. There's Old Kilpatrick there. You see that well and truly. This was the original entrance to the Clyde, or ran along the wall. So the wall must have ran along here. They didn't have any need, according to this book, to have the wall because it ran into the water. So the water levels were certainly higher, I would say. So we went from Old Kilpatrick, according to this book, to the second position, which is Kirkintilloch, which is 7 miles east of Old Kilpatrick. So if we go 7 miles east of Old Kilpatrick, we should come to, did it say, sorry, Kirkintilloch. So I know there's Kirkintilloch. So there we go, Old Kilpatrick, Kirkintilloch just here. Again, these are all sitting in waterways. A stream ran at least as far as this site, leaving various traces en route. We then go to Croy Hill. So this is during the time of General Roy, whoever that was, and Jesse Mothersole, an archaeologist who was using his records, General Roy's records. There was a stream or waterway there at one point, all the way through 7 miles east of Kilpatrick. A stream ran at least as far as this site, leaving various traces en route, so branching off various canals. 4 miles beyond the last, at Croy Hill, there's evidence of a former fosse nearly 16 feet deep, 20 to 30 feet wide on its east bank, and 50 feet of a ditch. So that's at Croy, which Larbert and Croy's over there somewhere, isn't it? There we go. Where is Croy, anyone? So I need to find Croy. Anyway, it's along there, Bonnie Bridge. Castle Carry, 3 miles north of Croy, one of the most important forts along the line, surrounded by a very strong wall. Stone roads, no evidence of a ditch found here with the canal. Seabeg Wood, it says it all, doesn't it? Seabeg Wood. The sea, a great fort connected to Rough Castle ditch, and a canal converged pits at Rough Castle, 1 mile from Camelon, full water. Falkirk, 6 miles from Castle Carry, a ditch or a canal which widens considerably beyond. The remains of Camelon are about 1 mile from Falkirk, nearer to Castle Carry. These investigations, made clear by General Roy, led to the discovery of several docks and evidence that cargoes were carried to and from the Clyde, where a large transport trade was conducted between east and west of Scotland. He found many fragments of Samian and Roman ware in the nearby neighbourhood. It was constantly a port of considerable importance. The distance between this one-time maritime harbour and Dumbarton along the line is approximately 24.5 miles, a distance accorded to the long walls. It appears also that an ancient canal linked the two extremes from Old Kilpatrick to Falkirk. So that's interesting, an old canal linked them. Ramsay also refers to the port of Falkirk, which assists in the understanding of its early position. The remains of these docks near Falkirk were described in detail by General Roy when commencing the triangulation of Scotland for the Ordnance Survey. When built, they were of course close to the tide and stood on the banks of the stream called the Charon, believed to be the Geke, to have been, and it was tidal. It is believed to have been tidal, but the sea does not come near to them now, as it says. So this was a vast waterway, and if you follow the waterway through, it comes out at Bowness. But also, as I believe what I've mapped is, as you come up towards Sais, Bonnybridge, Falkirk, Grangemouth, and then down into Ports, Pullman and Linlithgow, you still have the old canal, which is the old canal there. I can't remember the name of it. But at Linlithgow, we have, it was the Royal Linlithgow. You have a place further down called Bathgate in Blackburn, and it was down here. The name gives it away. Bathgate. It's a gate. Look at the rock, the solid rock either side, and this area here is where the water came down through Bathgate, as the name suggests. Following the railway lines now, the railway lines are actually the embankments of the old waterways, and all this, East Calder, most of this was all a valley under water. All of it was southbound. It then came out at Rathole, at Kirkliston, and it then made its way up into Cramond, and that's why we have Cramond Island so far out. For anybody that knows about Cramond Island, it was a fort actually, but it was more than a fort, it was a canal, a lookout point for the canal and entrance. So this was an entrance feeding water, salt water in, and this is the purpose of me reading this book, from this portion from Combs Beaumont book, because with my own research, boots on the ground as such, looking at standing stones, looking at the ley lines, the old railway lines and the old embankments, and walking these places, this was an ancient waterway, and these isles were much different from what they are now. Most of the islands, or most of the British Isles, were islands underwater, and we've lost our power because they've rewritten history, but it's thanks to people like Combs Beaumont, and not just him, many other historians who, even if they were in amongst the aristocratic lot, they questioned things and asked what was the truth of our history, and so if it wasn't for these type of people, we wouldn't have this stuff. But it testifies to his work, what he's written here, that this was an ancient canalway, because as I'm showing people, it sure was. It is an ancient canalway. So, yeah. They've got rid of the water, and with that they've gained power and made us their slaves. So how do we get the water back, and how do we get our power back? That's the question.